Hi, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Your Next Business Bestie. My name is Jenn Hart, and I'm your host. This podcast is all about introducing you to the people I think you should know that you might not even know you need to know. And it's partially because they're businesses, but it's even more so because of their stories, because of their passion, because of the why, even though I think why has become an overused term. It is about the why that keeps us going. And as Angie said on last week's episode, it's giving you coworkers in the entrepreneur space that you can celebrate with, that you can lean on when things get hard. And I have a really cool guest for you today. This is Kristy Black of Kristy Black Creative. Hi, Kristy.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Yeah. And what's funny is this is the first time Kristy and I have ever talked. We have been following each other on social media a couple months now, I would say. But
Yeah.
we met through a business coach. Her name's Diana Davis. I have mentioned her several times, and she'll be a guest in the future, which I'm really stoked about. But Diana has this online community called Recess for entrepreneurial creatives. So actually, a lot of people that will be on the podcast are part of that community. But we were just saying how Diana has this incredible ability to just attract like-minded people. We're all on really different tracks as entrepreneurs, but like I don't feel like this is the first time I've talked to Kristy, which is so cool. But Kristy, why don't you tell us what it is you do? What is your business?
Yeah, my name is Kristy Black, she, they, and I am a brand strategist and designer for entrepreneurs who want to become greater catalysts for change, step into the limelight, and increase their income, impact, and joy without running themselves ragged. So I do that through done for you branding as well as my group program called Brandcamp.
Ooh, let's talk about Brandcamp because I've seen you post about it. I don't know a lot about it. We didn't talk about this before air at all, but let's talk about what is Brandcamp? What does it do for people? What do they walk away with?
Yeah, Brandcamp is sort of my latest creation, which is really focused on helping entrepreneurs build a brand that feels like them, and really get more comfortable showing up online and using their values to anchor every action in their business into. So it's kind of the foundation setting of branding where it's like, okay, what are your visions? What are your values? And is your voice like? So we really work through each of those pieces over the course of 3 months. And then you walk away having sort of your brand fundamentals done and dusted.
And what kind of businesses is it for? Anyone and
Uh,
everything? Like who's the ideal for Brandcamp?
yeah, for Brandcamp, it's really anyone who has a business that's established. You have to have had at least one offer that you've been able to consistently sell over time. But we've had product-based businesses, service-based businesses, coaches. Pretty much it's for anyone as long as you feel like you have a consistent offer and you want to use your business to create positive change in the world, even if you don't know what that looks like yet.
That's such an interesting concept too. Like as an entrepreneur, we always like there's the services, there's the products, but what's the bigger picture? And for me, really, it's this podcast. It's community. It's like the positive change is entrepreneurs not feeling so alone in this crazy world that we're part of. Um, can you give us some insight as to some of the brands that you've worked with in Brandcamp?
Like the types of businesses?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've had yoga instructors, healers, coaches, writing coaches, educators, calligraphers, food blogger. So a nice range of people and some traditional artists as well.
That's really cool. And
Yeah.
then the other part of your business, the brands that you do for people, what does that look like? What does working with you on a brand look like?
Yeah, that is a really beautiful collaboration. This is for someone who's a little bit more established. You're maybe, 3-ish years in, you have had success, it feels really good. But maybe you are kind of at the upper limit of sort of like an income goal that you have, or you aren't having the impact that you want to have, or you just want to take things in a new direction. That's where done for you branding can really come in and help you sort of break through those income plateaus, work exclusively with dream clients, and create the impact that you want over the course of your business.
So would it be taking an existing brand and building off from it, or starting over on your branding, or both, either?
All of the above. So
All
I
the
think
above.
one of the most common misconceptions about branding is that I, as the strategist and designer, come in and like fabricate something. And it really always comes down to the business owner themselves and what already exists. So it's about mining all of those gems. You already have everything you need. It's just a matter of getting all of those pieces in the right order and conveying them in a way so that your dream clients are like, oh, that's why I need to work with so and so for XYZ. So it's just me sort of uncovering that. So some people come to me before they've launched a business. Sometimes they already have some pieces that they like, or maybe they need, some new stuff. It can really look like any number of things, but it's all about building that consistent sort of strategy.
Love it. So let's backtrack. I know you've been in business for 13 years. You've been full-time for 4 years. How did you get into this? What did you do before this, if anything? Why this crazy path of entrepreneurship?
Yeah, I started out as an all-purpose graphic designer. I joke that initially my dream clients were anyone with a pulse and a wallet. So I did everything, and I had a season of that for about 2 years. I did web, I did email, I did social, I did branding. And over time, I really sort of honed in on the fact that branding was what I loved most, because it does have the strategy component, taking a lot of data and compiling it into succinct, actionable steps was really alluring to me and something I enjoyed, and also that visual side. And so during the years where I was side hustling my business, I was an in-house designer at a number of places doing print design, packaging design, a variety of different design things. And I always knew I wanted to work for myself. And I was often envious of the people who got laid off from their jobs, because I was like, oh, that's like the story, right? That we hear. That's
Right.
like, oh, I quit my job and I had to figure it out and look how great it was. And I was like, oh man, maybe that'll happen to me. But it
Oh my gosh,
didn't.
that's so funny to like dream of being laid off or fired or whatever. But I feel that because I mean, my business is full-time, but I do work part-time still because it is scary to take that jump into full-time self-employed. And yeah, I mean, people who are laid off who literally get, pushed into it. It's, sink or swim. There you go. But instead having to make the choice, somehow that's even scarier.
Yeah. And I think the like jumping in, to me, it's like I was on a safe boat. You know what I mean? It's like, ooh, this is safe. And instead of being pushed into the ocean, I had to be like, I have to jump. I have to make the decision to do that. And I think I let indecision be my decision for a little bit longer than I would have liked to. But I'm here now, and that's what matters. But yeah, it was it was scary to jump into the deep end, if you will.
Yeah, I feel that. I'm right there trying to decide if I'm ready to maybe by the time this episode is live, I will have chosen to jump off from the safe boat. Um, well, okay, so where did I totally also agree with the your ideal client is anyone with a pulse and a wallet because that's I started off as a virtual assistant and it was literally oh my gosh, I look back at my pricing and like 12, $15 an hour and I will do anything you need from data creation to document design to websites and social media. I mean, my first clients were paying me less than $200 a month for 16 social media posts a month. And I'm like, yeah, but we all start somewhere.
Yeah.
So where was your business coming from at that point, 13 years ago?
What do you mean, where was it coming from?
Referrals or were you
Oh,
advertising?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. It was a lot of referrals and random, it was friends of friends, so somebody's aunt needed a baby shower invite for somebody. So it started out kind of like that. And then it was like, oh, so and so has a business. And I will never forget when I got my first like client that was like a full stranger. And I was like, wow, I made it. Like that just blew my hair back in ways that I couldn't comprehend. And I was like, wait, can I keep doing this? It was like the first seed of hope that was planted. And I was like, ooh, I could get used to this. So yeah, that's kind of how that went.
Yeah, I mean, referrals are my business is almost all referral based, and that's beautiful. But there is something extra special about that person that like found you from a social media post, or like you don't quite know how they found you and they want to work with you. Like there's that's really cool too. And what was the pivotal moment that you finally decided to jump off the safe boat and go full time in your business in 2020?
Yeah, I thought 2020 was just going to be the year. Pre-pandemic, I was like, this is it. I'm going to quit by my birthday, which was in April. And I was like, oh no, I'm scared. And so I didn't. I kind of held on tight until December. And I was just like, okay, there is no perfect timing. There is nothing that is safe, because people were getting laid off constantly, and it wasn't clear if I would be able to keep my job forever. I didn't even particularly like that job at that point. I had been there for a while, and I was kind of, it wasn't bad or great. It was just kind of like in the middle. And I finally was like, you know what? It's now or never. Like, I just have to do it. You can always get another job. I'm like, I could get a part-time job. I could get a full-time job. Like, nothing in life is ever like truly permanent except for like death. Like most things
Right.
can be changed or altered. And so I just, decided that it was time at the end of the year in 2020.
I love it. I mean, it's funny because I look back to 2020 and that was the year I had all these big ideas of all these things that were going to happen that year. And it was literally like the universe was like, that's cute.
Yep.
Here's a pandemic. Like, good luck.
Sit your ass down.
Right, right. You're just gonna live this year and not go anywhere. What did the first couple months once you went full time into your business look like? What did it feel like?
Oh my gosh, it felt amazing. I hired my second coach at that time. I had worked with coaches previously, or one coach previously, and I hired someone who was a coach specifically for designers. And it really was just like the support that I needed in the time. Her name is Jess Langley. She is a delight. And I think I just needed to borrow belief. And I think that's what a lot of us do when we work with coaches, is borrow belief from somebody else. And yes, some tools, and yes, some mindset, but a lot of it was just getting my footing and knowing what was normal and how to track things and how to set things up. It was very exciting, but I'm super glad that I had somebody to kind of anchor me in a time that maybe would have otherwise felt untethered.
I love that term of borrowing belief. I
Mhm.
mean, especially from coaches, right? And I totally agree. Like I've been through two of Diana's programs, Ascend and Camp Clarity, and all of the tactical things she provides are fantastic. But you really are borrowing other people's belief in your business, and you feel like you can take on the world when you're going through coaching. And it's funny because that's not necessarily what you think you're going into coaching for. You're like, I'm going to get all of this, like my systems are going to be in line and I'm going to have a social media plan and my funnels and blah, blah, blah. But that's not what it's about. It's literally just having someone else have a little bit of faith in you that can be, especially jumping off the ship and going full time. I think that's why I keep thinking like, okay, I need to sign up for another coaching program. Just not even because I necessarily don't know where my business is going, but just to get that little boost from community,
Mhm.
especially. Diana's the one that, because I launched my strategy sessions on Black Friday of last year. So not just doing tactical things, but strategy is what I absolutely love, helping entrepreneurs take their big ideas and make them actionable. And it was Diana who was like, Jenn, you've got to stop doing this for free. Because I would sit down with people and literally strategize their whole business launch or product launch or whatever. And it was just because I liked doing it. And I think she literally said to me, then why aren't you making money doing it? Um, and I still haven't I actually made a reel this morning to post about my strategy sessions because I still don't advertise it well. But sometimes you just need somebody to kind of ask you, why aren't you doing this? Like, you should be, you're good enough, have faith in yourself, just go fucking do it.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's that simple. So, what keeps you going in your business? When you do have those hard days or when things don't go right, for lack of a better term, what is your why behind your business?
Yeah, I think getting to help other entrepreneurs rediscover what makes their work so impactful is always what keeps me going, because it's so beautiful to me to like go into someone's business and pull out all of these pieces and look at everything that's there and be like, hey, this is the picture that it's creating. Here's how we can just amplify it more. And the number of times I've had clients cry or say like, oh my gosh, that's so me. Like, it just changes my heart for the better every single time. And then I get to see them out in the world doing the thing, and they come back and tell me, I'm only working with dream clients now, or like I just booked my biggest client ever, and I'm like, that's so beautiful to me, and getting to see people create the impact they want to do, whether that's through scholarship programs or donating percentages or having more time off for themselves so they can volunteer or do those things. It can look in any number of ways, but knowing that ripple effect there it's so beautiful to me.
Yeah. And I know you only work with people that have value-led businesses that are trying to create change in this world. What does that terminology mean to you? My master's degree is in business with a concentration in corporate social responsibility. So that's what really like sung to me when you filled out my form for the podcast, was like, yes, I feel that completely. But what does that mean in your world when you are talking to prospective clients? What are you kind of looking for?
Yeah, I think it kind of depends on where they're coming in. Sometimes I work with businesses and they're like, hey, we're already donating, this percent here, but they want to take it to the next level. They're like, okay, that's nice. And like, let's yes and it. And so they want to be more tactical about, how can we have better hiring practices that are more inclusive? How can we, really bring change to our immediate community, especially if it's like a local based business. And sometimes, if it's newer entrepreneurs, especially those in Brandcamp, sometimes it's like, hey, I have wanted to do this. It's on my heart. I don't know where to start. I may be afraid of not doing it right, not being perfect. And I'm doing air quotes for everybody, because we're worried that like activism or just doing, any kind of social good has to be done in like a perfect way, which is such a farce. But sometimes we need support in moving through that. So it can really look like any number of things, but I can just tell usually when I'm talking to someone that
Right.
there is something driving them more than just a bottom line. It's more about the change that they want to make.
It's not just dollars and cents. It's funny because
Yep.
it's actually become a theme in this podcast unintentionally, of people helping communities take small steps. So like for you, it's the people that are making even small steps of activism that might not be, they're not donating 100% of what they made, of course, but like they're making small movements to create change. I had a nutritionist who was like, it's about making the small changes that work in your world that to get you to whatever healthy is for you. And, episode 3 was Elizabeth Bolus, who was talking about toxic ingredients and how there's the mindset of like, it has to be everything, right? I have to get rid of every toxic ingredient or I'm not doing it, like you said, quote unquote, right. And all of you have commented on the fact that there is no right. There's what's right for you. There's what's right for you in this chapter, in this space, in this time. And it can feel like a lot when you have a small business, when you want to pay it forward, but you're at the period of that you're taking any and all business, that you'll take anything thrown your way. You're trying to make your bill, like that's when you volunteer time versus money. And like, there's this interesting shift from donating your time to donating your money to donating both. Where does that come from for you though? What made you decide that you wanted to work? Of course, it obviously sounds wonderful to work with values based, but why is that so important to you?
I think it's who I am as a being. I
Yeah.
even in my earliest jobs as like a teenager, I got written up for not doing things that I felt were unethical, even though they were like what I was required to do. And the silliest one I can think of is I worked at an Ace Hardware, and they were like, "Hey, your job is to take all of the candy off of the shelves and dust them and then put them back in so they look like they were freshly stocked." And I was like, everything's expired. Like, it's a hardware store. Nobody's buying candy at the hardware store. And I was like, we can't sell this. Like, I'm not going to dust it to make it look new if it's all expired. This is product we should not be selling. And they're like, that's what your job is for the day. And I was like, I'm not doing that. And I got written up. And that was like the first most
That's so
mundane. But I
funny.
mean, even in my corporate jobs, speaking up against racist practices that I saw or unethical behavior. And it just really wore me down. And I watched my own spark sort of just dull when I forced myself to work just for a paycheck and to support people who were not considering, maybe what is moral or ethical. They were just looking at the
Mhm.
dollars. And it just kept rubbing me the wrong way. And I was like, if I'm going to work for myself, I want to do it on my terms. I want to do it for people who give a shit. And I'm done, being written up for silly things.
I love that. That is so funny. But it's funny because like I go to Tractor Supply and I always look at the candy, and unless I have my daughter with me, I'm like, no, who's buying candy when they're buying grain for their horses? Or I get dog and cat food, but I'm like, it's so random that that's a thing, but I love that. So it's literally an ingrained part of who you are. Like that's beautiful. Something that with my social media clients, a big question I always get is, do we talk about politics and religion on social media? Right. Which is a very like 90s and earlier, you don't talk about politics and religion, even early 2000s. And I always ask my clients, you have to decide what is important enough to you that you're okay with losing business for it. And some of them will say nothing, and I call bullshit. I'm like, you're thinking as a business mind, you're not thinking as a human. And
Mm.
as business owners, we get this beautiful experience to be both at all times. Our businesses are part of who we are. And I push them. Like there are things that are important enough. And because, right, a couple of things are going to happen. You're going to repel the people that are completely anti whatever your view is, and they don't want anything to do with you. Well, newsflash, you don't want anything to do with them either. Pretty
Yep.
simple. You're going to attract the people that have similar views to you, and those are always wonderful humans to work with. And the third one is sometimes you're going to find the people that have opposing views but value you so much professionally that they want to work with you anyway. And then you get to make that decision. Do you want the business from someone who is actively on the other side of an issue, or is it something that's kind of middle line and you want to work with them anyway? And those can be beautiful relationships too, where it's, the conversations from both sides and opportunities for growth and challenging you on why your views are the way that they are. And I actually love those conversations with,
The
healthy.
right people.
Exactly. So for me, it's really pretty easy. Anything to do with LGBT rights, activism, trans rights and activism, anything to do with women's rights to their own bodies, anything to do with protecting our earth. Like, obviously, I'm pretty left leaning. You can tell from just those three. But I would love to know what you're passionate about, Kristy. What are those things that you do not care if you lose all the business for because they're so important to you, if you don't mind sharing?
Yeah, all of the above that you've mentioned so far. I also think that if there are people who don't care about having an anti-racist business, or they're not curious about it, again, you don't have to already be there, but have interest and curiosity about it. I mean, we are in Colorado, it's very white here, so I do have to keep an eye out for how people are perceiving things. And yeah, just any sort of anti-oppressionist lens is something that I look for. If you are going to second guess any person's human rights, then I'm outie. Like I'm not taking that money. There are so many people who can do brand design for you. In 2020, I had to turn away a client who was doing a fundraiser for police after George Floyd's murder, and I was
Oh,
like, no, that's a
mm-mm.
hard no for me. So
Yeah. And
it's not worth it.
I will say it doesn't matter. This ideology works on both sides. So that being said,
Mhm.
just because Kristy and I have very similar views, which I knew immediately, even if your views are completely opposite ours, it's still important to not be gray zoned in the middle
Mhm.
because you're going to come off as boring. I mean, there's no reflection of who you are. And this goes beyond politics and religion, but those are the big ones. Um, be who you are. Don't try to appease everyone because it's a beautiful place that Kristy and I are both in our businesses when you're only working with people that you really want to work with. When you're excited when your phone rings and it's one of your clients. When you're totally fine with putting out a fire because the client is so important to you and their business practices, who they not just what they do, but who they are aligns so perfectly with you. So I do want to say it doesn't matter right or left, conservative or liberal. It is important. Those things are important to show. And I guarantee if you sit down with that question long enough of what is important enough to you that you're okay with losing business over, you'll come up with something. And if you're sitting there and you're still saying, oh, nothing, 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 keep going, keep digging, because there's something, because we're all humans and we all have opinions and they're important. All
Yeah,
right.
and
Yeah,
I
go
often
ahead.
think that it's important to think about who your nightmare client is. I think a lot of
Mhm.
times we spend time thinking about our dream clients, which is really fun and exciting. But if you're like, I
Yeah.
don't know who that is yet, think about who that nightmare client is. Like, who are you okay to repel right now? Which is, what you're saying. Like, what's a post that I could put out that would show my values, that would scare away, my nightmare client of like Uncle Carl, like who is that person? And you could
Yeah.
give them a name and like figure out how to get them out of your orbit because it does everyone a service when you are being clear.
Yeah, I love that. All right. So we have Brandcamp. We have your branding, how do you phrase it? Done for you branding? Is that what you call?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. What's next in your world? Where do you see your business going in the next year or two? What do you want to be doing? Or it could be just, building on what you already have, but what do you see coming down the pipeline for your business?
Yeah, more of the same. I feel like I often think of business as sort of like breathing. And so I've had seasons where like you expand, then you kind of contract and you pare
Yeah.
things down. I feel like I have pared things down in a way that feels very exciting and supportive for me. And for my clients, I do envision more workshops, more low ticket free things. I have a master's degree in adult education. And so one of my favorite things to do is just sharing information and helping people get access to branding information because it's not always accessible for those who have more time to invest in money. So I definitely want to be doing more of that, which I'm already doing, but I foresee that continuing as well.
I love that. That's great. And what a cool master's degree too. I'm always fascinated by what entrepreneurs actually got their degrees in. Like my bachelor's degree is in English with a concentration in document design. So that is in my world. But I was always asked, are you going to be a teacher? I'm like, no, absolutely not. And then my master's is in business with a concentration in corporate social responsibility, which seems like I would go into a corporate job, but I've only once ever had a corporate adjacent job, and it was miserable. So it's so funny. Like Angie, who was on last week, who's a career coach and she coaches coaches and she does helps people find their jobs. She was a civil engineer. Her degree was in civil. I think it's civil engineering for sure. I think it was civil. But it's just so funny where all of it, like where our degrees are. There was a TikTok trend not that long ago that was like, what's your degree in and what are you doing now? And there's so many people that are not doing anything close where yours would align, right? The education you had would align, but that's so funny to me. All right, where can people find you? How can they reach out to you? When's the next round of brand camp? All the things.
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram. I am on there most often. That's at Kristy Black Creative. Website is kristyblackcreative.com. If you are interested in values-based work, but you're not sure where to start, I do have a free workbook, which is called your Profitable Purpose Branding Workbook, which is all about values and how to start using them. That is on my website as well. And the next round of Brandcamp will kick off in the fall. I believe September 12th is the start date.
Anything else you want to share about you, your business, the people you work with?
No, just thank you so much for having me. This has been so delightful.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate it. And I'm looking forward to getting to know you more, figuring out ways that we can work together, because I think your whole business model is beautiful. And there's another shout out to Diana for bringing us together because that is wonderful. And for everybody listening, definitely go follow Kristy, go engage with content. And if you're looking for branding, definitely reach out to her. And if you are interested in creative strategy or anything that I do, you can find me at Life Jen's Way on Instagram or Jenn@jensway.com. Two N's on Jenn always. Or if you're interested in being a guest on the podcast or know someone that should be, I would love to hear from you. And yeah, a huge thank you, Kristy, especially it's a Friday afternoon. We're recording this end of the week. I really, truly appreciate it. I think what you're doing is so important in the world. So thank you for that too.
Thank
And
you.
yeah, everybody listening, I will see you next week. See you if you're watching the video cast on your next business bestie. Have a great day.